try it out. So let's just make a cylinder, because be honest, I don't think I've thrown a pot in a while. This is 2 pounds. This is a new clay by Standard. Our favorite manager, former delivery guy, Angel, recommended it to me. It's number 1, it's called 800. I don't remember the name of it, but what it is, it's similar to the Chestnut clay, but it's got speckles in it. So I'm super excited because we really like the Chestnut clay. I just don't always love the color, but I think the speckles are gonna make it really interesting. So let's do it. Let's throw a 2 pound cylinder. Let's get back to basics. All right, let's go. So wheel moving relatively fast, about 75 miles an hour. I'm just gonna make it stick. 2 hands, elbow back here, other hand sort of on top, keeping it in that sort of cone shape. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start to cone up. Heel of my hand, wrist of my hand attached to my arm, my forearm, which my elbow is attached to my pelvis bone, creating a really nice tension rod between the clay and my wrist. This is gonna tell the clay, hey, dude, you can't go past this wall. This hand is gonna go on top. Remember, we're only gonna use this portion of our hand. When we use this portion, we end up with that sort of divot in the middle, and that divot's gonna cause us problems if we have to cone the clay up. This is gonna tell it how high it's gonna be. So we're gonna go a little faster. We're gonna cone up, pinky and ring finger grouped together to squeeze that clay in towards the center. Both hands squeezing together and create that cone. Again, I don't care if that cone is centered, it's all about isolating small bits. Then I'm gonna hang out up here and I'm gonna start to cone down. Again, using either my first knuckle or my second knuckle in the middle, dropping that right wrist so I can get that really nice sort of rounded disc on top. Slowly take my hands off. Now that's centered. So I'm gonna do this in regular motion, but I'm gonna be going down and in. So I'm going down and in, down and in, getting a little wonky down here, hang out down at the bottom. Now I'm gonna do full hand. Top is the ceiling, wrist is the wall, and if I just hang out right here, sort of scrape away this extra caca here, and hang out. Left hand is perpendicular to the wheel head so that I don't end up with that. Right there, that's gonna give you the Guggenheim. That's gonna give you too narrow of a base. That's from this puff, sort of aiming this way. So I'm gonna, again, I'm gonna fix that by having my wrist aim towards that butt that started sticking out, pushing down. That's gonna fill in the Guggenheim entrance, wrapping the stems of these fingers around, filling that in, slowly taking off. Now, you may have noticed in the pottery world, we have a little bit of a disaster. The company that makes masonite bats has decided to discontinue masonite bats. I'm not sure about for you, but for us, our studio, that's a real problem. We are a boutique studio, all of our studios, so we offer bats. I just think it's a no-brainer. The extra expense doesn't kill me. This way people don't have to touch their bats. But the problem is now we can't get these specific brands, and it's really becoming a problem. I can't seem to find ones that fit well and do what they need to do. So now our bats are starting to get old until we get a solution. So you may hear sort of that moving around. You guys have heard me say in other videos, you want to find really hard, dry clay off of the floor. Hopefully your studio, it's hard to find dry clay. You're gonna want to shove that dry clay in the holes. Dry clay is gonna give you a little bit of time before it gets wet and malleable. So the hard clay is gonna act like a rock, and that hopefully will stop your bat from moving. But if that becomes a problem, the solution is, the reason that bat is moving is because you're pushing down and in. And moving down and in makes the bat move back and forth. Once you get that clay centered and you start hearing the ticking, not sure if you can hear that, just pull your left hand back a little, or whatever your back hand is, and have sort of a floating center. And what I mean by that is, before you're using the bat to create the center, but if you have your back hand just hanging out just a little back so that the clay is not pushing, the bat is not going in to the bat pins back and forth. Just have it sort of floating, but your arm is keeping it still. You don't really need that bat to be the best bat possible. You're sort of creating your own center of floating about an eighth of an inch from the top. And if you slowly take your hands off, it should work. But that takes a little practice. I am going to do a video about throwing off the hump And that sort of helps you practice to create a new center. All right, now quick review. We're gonna go ahead also, I guess everything is a review, right? Because if you watch my videos before, well, you've seen me throw plenty of cylinders, but I find the cylinder, again, always becomes basic. And as I teach more, because I'm back to teaching a little bit more, I notice new things. I notice new silly little analogies, metaphors, similes about how to treat the clay. So might as well throw them at you now. All right, so what we're gonna do now is, again, we're making a cylinder. We wanna drop those elbows on the tops of our thighs. We're gonna lean our hands now down to the bat. Now with those bats getting old, you don't really wanna press down because that's gonna start to hurt your hand. And although I say, you know, we bleed for our art, there's no reason for you to be in pain. So you're gonna just sort of drop those hands down. You don't wanna push down, just to brace yourself, wrists are down. We're gonna take our 2 thumbs, because it's 2 pounds of clay and I find bigger tools, bigger thumbs will help you. Stop talking and get those fingers wet. Push those fingers together. Start to push down just a little bit. Make sure they stop wiggling. Create yourself that little groove. And now you're gonna go straight down. You're gonna gently pick those wrists up, but you don't wanna have them flying in the air like this. The minute you lift your elbows up, now your upper body becomes separate from your lower body, and now you're going wherever the clay wants, and we don't wanna do that. Now, a lot of people sit there and go, oh, what do we do with that? That's gonna happen sometimes. I know, depends on what your fingers are doing that day, maybe the clay. So all you wanna do is you wanna just sort of the side of your hand, compress that back in. Now what I've got down here is a sort of a V shape or a dam sort of crevasse. And I wanna leave it sort of that shape because I want to be able to get multiple fingers in there. So as I start to get bigger in clay, we want that hole to be bigger, because when you've got a 3-pound ball, you don't wanna have one thumb, and then how do you get all your fingers in there? You're not gonna be able to open up a 3-pound ball with one finger. So you need more strength, more fingers, bigger hole. So you're gonna go ahead and check that bottom. I'm going for no foot. I've got about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. I'm a big fan of that because I know how I throw, and I know that I'm constantly cleaning that bottom. And when I'm constantly cleaning that bottom, I'm going down a little bit more and a little bit more. So I always start with a little bit more than what I want. A pot with a foot, I will leave 3/4 inch. It's just who I am, but I suggest it highly. So again, this is where people also go, hey Mel, I'm throwing it off when I open up. It's probably because one of 2 things. You are either not supporting the clay on the outside, or when you are supporting the clay on the outside, your fingers are running right past that support. So this is the tool. Visualize that this is just a whole bunch of little rocks packed together to create a pot. When you go ahead and just pull, those rocks are running for the exits, right? But if you don't have a wall stopping them, they're gonna scatter all over. But if this is the wall that says, okay, you guys can run from the center, but you've gotta stop right at this wall, it's gonna be a little more organized. So we're gonna put our 2 fingers inside, make them the same length, and we're gonna scoop. So we're gonna pull straight towards our hand, our left palm, get a little sticky, take it out slowly, pull towards that palm, and then I'm gonna come out. So that's gonna give me that really nice right angle in there that I need. Now, if it looks like it's off a little, but you know that you've opened in the center, you could just have your back hand back here, sort of hold on, put your elbows down in your thighs, use your wrist to just sort of hang out and tell the clay that that's where you want it to be. So I call it the claw. This hand is on the outside, taking all those clay grains and going, hey, come on, come back here. And this hand is helping it over on this side. So it's sort of like a collar. And again, if that bat's a little wonky, you want to do it a little gentler. You want to go inside and smooth out that inside. Get rid of any sort of divots that might be bothering you as a human. I'm going to go ahead and pick this up in a second so you guys can see what I mean by that right angle on the inside. When we're aiming for a cylinder, we want the inside to do this because we want those walls to know that they're going to go straight up. If you do a scoop and your inside looks like this, then your clay thinks that it's going to start traveling this way. This is the foundation for your pot. So I'm going to go inside and hopefully you'll be able to see that. So what I did was I put my 2 fingers in here, scooped with my fingertips, and came back out. If I go and I do that shape, right? And I do this, and I push with this, that pretty much says bowl. And that's gonna make the wheel really happy because the wheel thinks you're gonna make a bowl. The wheel would like you to make a bowl. Centripetal force. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and fix that. You can see it's a little off because I played with it a little. Again, I didn't choose the best bat. It all starts at the beginning, right? If you don't wedge your clay well, I don't wedge my clay. I cut it right out of the block. I trust that standard has no air bubbles. So I'll cut cubes out and then just hit it into a ball because I personally hate wedging. So now I'm gonna start to pull. What's the most important thing, everybody? Say it with me. Slow down your damn wheel. So your wheel's doing 100 miles an hour for those things that need the speed to facilitate what you have to do. So we're gonna pull it down. Not too much, just a little. These walls are thick enough to handle that speed. And now we're gonna be aggressive. My sponge is filled with water. I've got a sponge Oreo going on. Now, a lot of you guys have been getting all of the sort of fancy, colorful, kidney-shaped sponges. The problem with those, I feel those are more finishing tools. They don't really grip the clay and they just sort of slide up the side. I'm a big fan of these ratty, just round sponges. There are different qualities out there right now, but I would go with, try and find the best quality, or honestly, take a giant car wash sponge that your studio has to clean your tables, cut it in pieces. The pores also help as sort of like a grip. So now I'm going to start down here on the bottom. I always slow my wheel down on the bottom. That's why I always suggest you keep your foot on the pedal. As you get better, you're going to intuitively slow down and speed up your wheel. I didn't even realize I did it until I started teaching my Big Pots class. I don't use this finger. You guys know it's crooked, crushed between a wheel and a car seat, pottery wheel. You're like, hey, how'd that tire get up to the car seat? Anyway, let's go. So we're gonna go down to the bottom, our hands are attached. Now I don't butterfly, I don't lock in. I just have this hand sort of touching this hand. This again becomes one tool. My right elbow stays on my body. If you can't keep your left elbow on, that's fine. But for a righty, your right elbow, lefty, left elbow. Gonna start down on the bottom. We're gonna push those clay grains underneath those other ones. And I'm gonna start to travel up, bending at that elbow. And then I'm gonna meet up here. So then I'm gonna shush my lip, compress my lip. Now, when I say meet up here, it's because I don't wanna meet this into a point. We never want that lip to get super thin, because if it gets thin, it's gonna continue to get even thinner as you go. Slow down my wheel a little, go under here, push those clay grains underneath that existing wall, squeeze the clay as I go up. You can see those finger lines are going horizontal. That means my hand is going at the same speed of the wheel. Loosen up at the top, meet up here, and then shush that lip. Now, what you can't see from where you are is that my clay on the top looks like the letter D. And what I mean by that is this wall becomes straight, but like a straight edge like this. But that centripetal force is gonna make it go back round again. But if you go ahead and go like this, you're gonna tell the clay or remind the clay or satisfy the clay into making a bowl. So I'm gonna get down here again. Notice that I can't get that left hand to touch my right hand, but my arm is stable. It's been stable this whole time. So it remembers the stability. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that thumb out, start to go out, and I don't think you can see my head, but I'm actually looking now at the side of my pot. Now I'm starting to think about the profile until I get to the top. Then I go shh. Now again, you'll notice I'm gonna get the water out of the inside. Do you have to do it constantly? No. Do you wanna avoid a groggy bottom? Then don't constantly compress the floor. Compressing the floor 1 or 2 times is fine. The water sitting in there for a couple of pulls is not gonna be the end of the world. Now I want you to notice, I'm not sure, but I think that was only 3 pulls, but you can see the height. So just because you increase the size of your clay doesn't mean you increase the amount of pulls. You just have the ability to be a little more with each pull. So now I've got a little bit of extra clay here. So now I want to take those clay grains, shove them underneath. So I slow down my wheel just a little bit, push down on the bat to squeeze those under. And now I'm going to thin that out. And over here, it's already sort of the desired thickness, so I don't want to do too much. Now I can get that thumb outside to touch my other hand. Being mindful, so I just had a little bit of a thin spot in the center there. It could have been where I decided to talk or where I was breathing. Breathing is always a problem. So you can notice now that I might have went in a little bit. So I can do one of two things. I can go with the side of a rib, or now I can straighten it. So now I'm not really doing much, but my sponge is sitting a little bit on the outside away from the wall, and I push that wall up against that sponge. Because I'm 51 and a half years old, I have to close one eye to actually see it because it gets a little blurry. Welcome to old people stuff. All right, and then I'm gonna come to the top. Now notice my wheel is never going too slow, right? If your wheel slows down to like that, this is how slow your hand has to go. And that to me allows for way too much thinking, way too much traveling in my brain to what I'm doing later on. But if you keep your wheel sort of around here, your brain has the ability to really kind of keep up with that speed of the wheel without losing your mindfulness, right? And then I come to the top and take that off. I want you guys to notice that this elbow always stayed on my body. This creates one big tool, my legs, my butt, my pelvis, my shoulders. The minute I lift this up, now I'm sort of separated, and my waist will cause me to go all over the place. So we really want to make sure that we have at least one elbow down on our thighs. So now I'm going to quote unquote call it a pot. I'm going to get the water out of the inside, sort of compress that a little. Now, again, we all know about trimming, right? So trimming will fix that. But you're going to notice right now when I use my wood tool that I didn't leave very much left. So again, this is 2 pounds of clay. So 2 pounds will get you the most enormous coffee mug that the coffee lover of your life will be like, no, that's way too much coffee. But that's without a foot. Remember, if I was to put a foot, I would probably lose about a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch in width. I'm going to measure this as well to tell you my width and my height. People always ask me about my videos from 4 years ago, about how much clay I use. I have no idea. No idea. So now what I want to do is I want to hold my wood tool, and I want to hold it like a pencil close to where the blade is. This hand's going to be on top. Now, choosing your wood tool, try and, in your community studio, try and find the pointiest one. You guys know I like the shark. That one's plastic. Temu now has a plastic one. That, yes, I'm not going to be embarrassed to say that I got it from Temu. So now I'm going to line that up with the side of my pot. I'm going to go straight down. I'm going to come out the way I went in. I'm going to take my pin tool. I'm going to hold it flush to the bat, slide that right underneath. Now, ideally, I would have liked to have gotten this clay into the pot, but I mean, it's not the end of the world. What is it, an ounce? And even now, let's say I didn't really want to trim that much. I would go down a little bit more. Take off some more little shreddies there. Switch tools. Just makes sense to switch tools. I don't know, even me who's doing this for 30 years, when I try and flip the wood tool, I always, it ends up not working. So a lot of people say, how much clay do you need to make this? That's a really, that's a very subjective question. So how much clay do you need to make a mug? Well, it depends on if you're gonna have a foot, depends on if you want it to be sexy and round, depends on if you want it straight up. There's so many different variables. If you go to Lakeside Pottery, which is a really great website of a studio that doesn't exist, there is this sort of guidelines, and it tells you the inches and the width and all of that. I say to get a good sized mug without a foot, 1.25 pounds is good. With a foot, 1.5 pounds. If you're a beginner, you're gonna need 1.5 pounds no matter what. But let's talk about width and height. So the width of this is 4¼ wide by 6 inches high. So 4¼ wide by 6 inches high. Now, if I was to go 5 wide, it's gonna be 5 inches high. So you really want to think about that. If I wanted to round her out, leave the walls a little thicker and round her out, it would be 5 inches high and 5 inches wide. All of those things really make a difference. I do have a video where I do 2 pounds of clay and I do 3 inches wide, 3.5 inches wide, 4 inches wide. You're gonna see it go down in increments. So if I wanted this to be some sort of great, awesome mug or vase or vase, then you know that 2 pounds is going to be good. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half. Let's take a look, see if I suck or not. All right, not so bad. Okay, so what you are going to notice is I did talk about that thin spot, which is right there. And that's not the end of the world. What I do want you to notice, though, is my squared off edge. So that right angle there, when I trim this, it is still going to look like a cylinder. I'm just going to get rid of a little bit of that. If this was rounded, if I would have scooped, this outside would have had to have been trimmed, if you're looking for a great pot, and a rounded edge. So that wouldn't be the end of the world, but that's fine. I like this thickness because I like to carve stuff. If I would have done maybe one more pull, gotten the whole thing to be this thickness, we would have gotten a little bit more height. But I don't love thin. Maybe it's because I'm lazy. But I want to show you guys how I scooped. So my hand was on the outside. Notice how my fingers are curled this way. And I have my hands attached and I pull. My hands are attached and I pull and I pull. And what I'm doing is I'm not actually pulling. I'm literally taking clay grains that are hanging out and I'm squishing them in, lifting up what already exists. You're not taking clay from the bottom and bringing it to the top. You're literally taking a wall that's 8 clay grains wide, making it 6, and then those 2 extra ones have to figure out where to go, so they stack on top of each other. And you're doing that all the way up. So I know it's a long video, but I felt like I wanted to cover a bunch of stuff since I haven't been around in a while. Maybe I have another hour before anybody walks in here, so we'll make some more videos. So there you go, 2 pound cylinder, 4 1/4 wide, 6 inches high. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and I will see you soon.